Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Roots Refuge Farm. My name is Jessica Sowards. My friends call me Jess, and I hope you will too. I'm here in my garden, and today I want to talk to you guys about the value of gardening. Now, it's the middle of winter right now. Today it's slightly sunny. The wild geese have been flying over. The spring peeper frogs are just starting to make a little noise in the evening. These are the first signs of spring, but we still have a couple months even here in warm South Carolina before we're actually out of the threat of frost. It's not time yet to have a lush garden and really have our hands in the soil, but it is time to be thinking about gardening, which is why I wanted to make this video. So normally during this time of year we would have quite a bit going on in the garden with the cool weather crops, but we had a very unseasonably cold snap this winter that knocked back a lot of the stuff in here. I have a little bit of things going on, some cabbages, some onions, some garlic, but mostly the garden is fairly empty. Which actually brings me to my first point. So many of you may be thinking about gardening. Maybe you've tried your hand at gardening in the past and it didn't go very well. Or you tried it, maybe you got a little overwhelmed, maybe you failed. Right now, in the throes of the winter, when everything is gray and the seed catalogs are calling, it's very easy to get wooed by the idea of gardening. But then when you come down to the hard work and the actual reality that things don't always go how you plan, it can be very easy to become discouraged and give up. Now, the first thing that I really want to encourage you in as you begin thinking about gardening or making the decision to become a gardener is that you're going to fail. Things are not always going to go how you plan. I've been gardening for many years now. I've successfully grown literally thousands of pounds worth of food over the course of my gardening experience. And still, something unforeseen happened this year. It was unusual. It was colder than it usually is, and it knocked back a lot of my stuff that wasn't in a place where I could cover it. It happens, even to very experienced gardeners. You're never going to arrive. This is why I always tell people to make the decision to become a gardener rather than making the decision to just grow a garden. If you're going after the harvest, you're going to get discouraged when the harvest isn't there. And I'm just going to tell you, sometimes the harvest isn't going to be there, at least not in the form of food. If your goal is to become a gardener, to grow year after year in your skill and in your experience and in your confidence, there's always a harvest of wisdom. Even, for instance, with the weather getting as cold as it did this winter and knocking back this stuff, I was really impressed to see the things that weren't bothered. I learned something. I was impressed to see what survived in my high tunnel. It was a learning experience even for me. So maybe I lost a little bit of the harvest of food, but I did harvest wisdom. And I think that if you start the beginning of your gardening career knowing that every single thing that you grow and every experience that you have is going to grow you in wisdom and as a gardener, you're not going to view those things as failures. We just can't approach the garden in a pass-fail mentality because we'll give up. Because frankly, there's food at the grocery store and we can easily convince ourselves that this isn't worth it whenever it's hard. We have to go after more than just the harvest. And actually, here's a great example of things not going right. You are not supposed to be in here. What are you doing? Shoo, shoo, turkeys. Shoo, shoo. Go back to your house. Go on. You can't eat my kale. Go. Shoo, shoo. Let's take a look in here. The greenhouse shelves are under construction, which means seed starting is happening very soon. So now it's the middle of the winter, and it's time to start planning. If it is in your heart to become a gardener, just starting is the only way you're ever going to get there. So this is why right now I wanted to talk to you about this so that if you're on the fence, maybe we can pull you over here to the green side where maybe we can get you growing something, because as soon as you grow something, as soon as you plant that first plant, you tend that first pot, that first little garden bed, you're a gardener. And it's only forward from here. You're only going to grow more as a gardener from here. So the very first argument that I have for gardening and why I feel everybody could benefit from it, it comes from my very own personal experience. I dealt with a lot of anxiety as well, always. I mean, through childhood, my teenage years, early adulthood, depression, as well as anxiety, but more anxiety than anything. I mean, there was a point in my life that I had a hard time going in the grocery store just because of the intense anxiety that I would feel. Now, I can't attribute this entirely to the garden because my faith definitely has a lot to do with the peace that I have now. However, I will say 100% that through the garden is how I learned that, in faith through the garden. There is something amazing about putting your hands to a process that just works. There's something amazing about being forced into patience and slow down and trust, about having to let go that there are going to be circumstances out of your hand, about not being afraid of failure. It has given me such an incredible peace of mind that I can see now as a gardener that so many areas of my life are better, and I am better in them because of the lessons that I've learned in the garden. And I always say that I think everybody could benefit from just kind of submitting themselves to the role of a gardener and putting their hands to it and going through the process of it and learning to let go of control and learning to be okay with failure. Because that has truly made such a massive difference in my life, the way that I handle life in general. On top of that, I mean, it's healthy. It changes your quality of life and your overall health to grow a garden. Yes, I'm talking about mental health, but also physical health, because to be honest, it is hard work. You're gonna grow muscles, you're going to push yourself. It's good to push yourself. You're gonna get to the point that you wanna quit, but you're gonna keep the reward in mind, and you're gonna keep your passion in mind and keep your choice in mind, and you're gonna push further a little bit more. And this is such a growing thing. We live in a society, in a world where we get so much instant gratification. And frankly, taking part in something that you cannot manipulate to instantly gratify you, I mean, the process is gratifying, but you have to do the diligent work. You have to show up. You can't quit. You have to go through the process. And then you get this reward in both the process and the end result that it's indescribable. And it's something that a lot of us don't necessarily have the opportunity to experience in our lives in other places. So I would say the quality of life thing is usually the first thing I mention when I make the argument for gardening, because it has so massively changed my quality of life. I thought the turkeys were coming back, and I think they are. Those little stinkers. You know, they got locked up in confinement in a coop that gets moved every day because of destroying my garden. Today is their first day out, and they are eating the kale. Yeah, there's some bad turkeys. I'm not even going to chase them because, honestly, they'll go back and roost tonight, and tomorrow they will not enjoy this freedom. The next point of why you should be a gardener, because it's fun. It's just fun. Man, what a cool thing to get to join into a community. If you've not really experienced the gardening community, people who garden love to talk about gardening. It's why I'm here. It's why, frankly, a lot of you guys are here, because my channel started to grow off of garden tours where I would just walk around and geek out over varieties. And you guys watched and you said, please show us more of this. And this camaraderie was built around the love of the garden. It's just so fun. There is something so inspiring about looking at seed catalogs, about thinking of all of the things that you could potentially experience by just growing them. It's something that's going to be there every day of the growing season, from seed starting to harvest to putting the garden to bed, and then you go into the winter season of planning the next year's garden. It's just an incredibly fulfilling hobby that frankly gives a lot of entertainment and enrichment to life. And it does come with a community. You have to make effort to join any community. You're not ever going to have community just thrust upon you that doesn't cost you anything. But the different community groups that I've been able to tap into with seed starting and online groups. We have a Facebook group called the Friends of Roots and Refuge where there's lots of discussion about the joy of growing things and the simpler life. Having something like this that you can share the joy of the tomato that you grew and just feel that entertainment, when so much of the entertainment that we are offered in our culture is honestly kind of soul-sucking. Like, there are so many things that we can take part in that don't make us feel better, that don't make us feel accomplished, that don't give us that sense of purpose. But when you start growing a garden, here you have a hobby that is entertaining, that is growing, that is enriching, that provides community, and also leaves you feeling fulfilled rather than drained. Well, I mean, it may leave you feeling a little bit physically drained, but overall, very, very rewarding. So there's not a whole lot going on out here. Just preparing for another year. Come back, though, in just a handful of months. This is going to be mind-blowingly full of life. Hey, girls. We're really in between seasons in here, but there's a little bit here that's looking really nice. You know, it makes me think when I'm thinking about community and I'm thinking about sharing the spoils of our labor and sharing the process and the moments of revelation that you really get in the garden and the peace that you get, kind of sharing that. One thing that I really see while I'm watching people in this community and people get into gardening for the first time is people are experiencing something to be proud of. They're doing something that they're proud of. And, you know, I think about just adulting and just living a normal adult life. You're going to work, you're taking care of your family, you're cooking dinner, whatever it is that you're doing. I feel like we're so cheated of moments that we can be like, look what I did. Like, look at this thing and somebody give me a gold star. You know, truly, like, think about how little daily adulting life actually gives you a gold star. And we should. I mean, like, we should have the attaboy moments and the pat on the back from doing the hard thing of living a good life. I mean, just living an everyday life, being personally responsible and doing the laundry. I mean, like, goodness, wouldn't it be nice if we got a gold star? And the thing that I love in the garden is that you come in and you do this adulting thing and you work and you don't get a gold star, but you get a tomato or you get a cucumber and you get basically these little rewards. It's like, hey, you stewarded the thing well. And here's what you have to show for it. And I know that I have personally had so many moments. I mean, even, you know, over a decade into growing a lot of food, being like, I grew this. And of course, I cannot take credit for the process. I cannot take credit for the fact that a seed turns into a fruit. But I partnered with it and I gave it what it needed. And it's this gold star moment that I find that so little of life really offers that. So I think that kind of like ties into the other point about the entertainment and the fulfillment and just the funness of it, the community of it. But it's something to be proud of. And I think we should note those things and give them the value that they deserve. These things are looking pretty rough, but it's because there's just the last few we have left to harvest. Check out those Brussels sprouts. Oh, I cannot wait to eat these. They taste so good. Homegrown Brussels sprouts are my husband Maya's favorite garden food. And they are really, really good. They have this really light texture that even when you buy fresh Brussels sprouts on the stalk at the store, they really just don't compare. But you got to think, I mean, we're cutting these off and most often eating them the very same day. When you grow food yourself, you have this opportunity to experience something that you literally cannot experience any other way. Store-bought tomatoes taste like disappointment. That's my joke, because if you have never eaten a homegrown tomato, ripened in the sunshine, picked off the vine in the middle of a hot summer afternoon, when all the sugars are concentrated, and you've bitten into that, you've never really tried a tomato as it can taste. The things from the store taste nothing like that because they were grown somewhere that was warm when it's cold here, most likely, and then they were grown by hybrids that were bred to be able to stay fresh on the shelves longer. Flavor was nowhere in the reasoning whenever those things were bred. And then they were cut off the plant when they were still green before they started to produce the ethylene gases that actually ripen a tomato, but also create all of the chemical compounds that give it its flavor. And so, yeah, they might have turned red on their process between, South America or whatever warm place they grew, and they might have looked ripe whenever you got them off the shelf at the store, but it doesn't even compare. It's not the same thing to that delicious homegrown tomato. And I think so many people are missing out on what food is supposed to taste like because the way that food is commercially grown now, it is so often for production and profit, and flavor goes out the window, nutrition goes out the window, the soil is not being maintained in order to make something at its full capacity of how it can nourish you. But when you grow food at home, you get to experience those heirloom varieties that make no sense for a commercial grower to grow. You get to experience the purple tomato and the striped eggplant and the really cool looking zucchini. You get to tend your soil in a way that those plants end up with as much nourishment as possible. There have been many tests and studies that show that homegrown food in well-managed soil is completely different nutritionally than conventionally grown food in soil that has been so damaged by monoculture. And on top of all of that, it just taste better. Now, there may be some cases where you can't tell the difference between something store-bought and homegrown. And sometimes you're going to go to the store and it's going to be in season, so it's going to be more locally grown. I'm not bashing all farming practices, but I am saying overall, if you have an opportunity to grow food at home, to eliminate all of the middlemen of shipping things across the country, of driving them to distribution centers, of wrapping them in plastic and then taking them to stores in plastic bags to your home, you're already doing the earth a favor by growing food in your backyard. And on top of that, I really do think you get to experience something much better, that's better for your body. It's better for your body in the process of growing it, but it is more nutrient dense, and the flavor. If you are a foodie, if you like going to nice restaurants and sitting down and reading the lovely descriptions of the food that they have prepared for you, grow your food at home. I don't even like going to restaurants now because my food at home is better. Even in the hands of a chef that is better at cooking food than me, I can taste and be like, this is really good, but this Brussels sprout really does not compare to the one that's fresh out of my garden. It has changed my relationship entirely with food to grow it myself, my enjoyment of it, my understanding of it, my appreciation of it. It has given a layer of joy to my life that I simply didn't have before. And I'm really not saying that to make anybody feel bad about their store-bought food. I'm telling you this because I really want you to get to experience it. And in order to do that, you're either gonna have to grow it yourself or partner very closely with someone who is. But it's really worth it because, man, this food does not taste like disappointment. Check out these artichoke plants. They're looking awesome. They got knocked back by that hard freeze, but they're back with a vengeance. I was trying to be quiet over here, hoping the ducks and the geese don't see me because they're so loud. And they will be loud if they think I have snacks. Now, my last point has always been my last point. When I make the case for gardening, this is never the top of the list for me because, well, there's such a process to really get to this. But I think the idea of food security is very quickly going up the priority list. When I first started gardening, the idea that there might ever be a need for food security was obscure at best. I had never at that point seen grocery store shelves empty other than maybe when, a snowstorm was coming and all the bread was gone. COVID really kind of changed that conversation because during 2020 was initially the big scare where everybody kind of rushed to the grocery stores, and a lot of people experienced that for a while. And I've talked to people who lived in different areas and obviously had a very different experiences based on where they live geographically. But since then, supply chain issues, inflation, just the different conversations about food scarcity, I think that it is bringing food security to the top of the list. And I will tell you that as a content creator, I can actually see what's being searched, like how people are ending up on my channel. And I can tell you that right now in 2023, there are way more people finding my channel because they're searching food security, how to grow food, how to obtain food security. They're searching these kinds of things way more than back in 2017 and 18 when I first started out. The thing with food security and gardening kind of brings me back to the idea of why you should start now. I've seen people who are in like prepper groups and stuff like that, and I'm kind of a fly on the wall in a lot of Facebook groups and different things. I just like to see how people are approaching things and what they're thinking about things. A lot of times I don't comment or engage. I find human thought process is very interesting. But I see a lot of people that have like emergency seed vaults, but they've never grown a garden. People who are planning, they've got seeds in their bug out bag and they're planning on, taking to the woods and maybe growing. I don't know. Because as a gardener and someone who has taken to stewarding the earth, I cannot wrap my head around that logically. The truth is that if you don't know how to grow a garden and there was a genuine need for you to do that, it would be too late to start. Gardening is a process. You as a gardener are going to grow in process. And while, it doesn't matter if you fail, when you're not relying on your garden to actually sustain your family, it doesn't matter if you fail. But if there was actually the pressure of genuinely providing for your family, it would matter more. And I would so much rather learn the process and make my mistakes on the early end when there's not an actual need for it, rather than waiting for a sense of emergency. I remember during the height of COVID when it was March and it was just the time to start gardening. And the video that I had that took off more than anything was varieties that you can grow and harvest fast, because people were thinking, how do I get food fast? And I don't ever want to encourage anybody to learn to garden under that mindset. Learn to garden now. Learn to garden when it's enjoyable. Learn to garden when you can make the mistakes. The garden is an incredible thing when it comes to food security, because once you have healthy soil and you have some seeds, you can save seeds and keep feeding that soil. You can set up a worm bin. You can do it very sustainably. And even on a small scale, you'd be surprised at how much food you can actually produce. It's amazing. I actually encourage people to garden when they're setting up their homesteads. I'm like, just start something. You don't have to wait until you have your area ready to do your dream garden where you want to do a whole acre. Just start something, because you're going to be learning. You're going to be building soil. You're going to be growing things that you can save seeds from. Just get the process started, because the more you have underway, the more secure you actually are. And I'm not making a political statement here. I'm not trying to make an argument. But the truth is that any food that you have in your yard is security for you. Any food that you have that you don't have to be dependent on somebody else to get is valuable to you. Yeah, it's better for the earth. It's not going to travel to get to you. Yeah, it's better for your pocketbook, because in a lot of cases, yes, there is an investment in getting started with things, but once you reach a point that your soil is in and it's good, and you just have to feed it every year, once you have the seeds and you can save them, that's when you really start seeing those savings. And then you get to this place of crazy abundance where you've learned how to grow stuff, where you've got your soil right, where you've got your seeds, where you've got your fertilizing and composting things in order, and you're like harvesting tons and tons of food. And you're like, wow, I have all of this security. And that's an amazing place to be, but it does not happen instantly. So if you have in your mind that you would like to start growing your own food for the sake of security, my number one piece of advice to you is start. Just start right now on whatever scale you can. Even if you're in an apartment, grow something in a pot. Even if you're in a neighborhood and you can't till up your yard, do a small raised bed. Partner with a neighbor. Partner with an elderly person in your community, at your church, that has the space and that could use the company, that you can go and work with them. Just start, because as soon as you start, you become a gardener. And as soon as you become a gardener, you begin to grow yourself, you begin to grow in wisdom and skill and capability, and you will, along the line, also begin to grow food. And the sooner that you have food that you grew yourself, the sooner you have that security. So that's my case for gardening. If you are an experienced gardener and you hung around this long, would you please share your experience in the comment section? Share where you started. Share the obstacles that you've overcome. I think hearing other people's experiences can be so bolstering to somebody who's making that decision to make the leap. Learning a new thing is hard. Making the decision to overcome failure is hard. Making the investment that you're not 100% sure is going to be worth it is hard. So I think it's important that those of us who have experience in this share our experiences and share the encouragement that only someone who's had success can give. So throw that down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I bless you. Until next time.